Hello and welcome to another video, and this is going to be a spoiler review slash what happened with Joker Folie à Deux. If you guys want a non-spoiler review of the movie, I did a short of it, literally right out of the theater reaction to that movie Thursday night, which you can watch. It's a minute long. It's a YouTube short. Obviously, reviewed it on the podcast episode that just went live today at the time of this recording, but I wanted to sit down and express maybe in a little bit further details why this movie is a fundamental mess and tragedy of a movie. As a massive Batman fan, obviously look around, you guys know here at the Marble Gallery that I'm a huge Batman fan. And I was a huge fan of the 2019 Joker film by Todd Phillips. Obviously, I reviewed it on the channel. You guys watched that video, I'm sure, and watched that review. And it was a tremendous movie that I thought earned every award that it did. I thought Joaquin Phoenix knocked it out of the park. I've always been a huge fan of Joaquin Phoenix as an actor. Throughout his entire career, I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan, love Walk the Line. So I knew that even going into this movie being, quote unquote, it's a musical, but they don't want you to know that it's a musical, even though everybody is pretty much going to call it a musical anyways. I knew that he'd be able to pull off singing. And obviously having Lady Gaga in the movie play Harley Quinn, I knew that she'd be able to sing too. So that element of it didn't bother me, and even you can go back into March, April, whenever they put out the first trailer, I put out a YouTube short, it looks fine, especially after all the stuff we heard about. It's a musical. It's gonna be kind of weird. The trailer looked pretty good. And I've said in my other review, and I'll continue to say it is an incredibly well shot, well made. It has some of the best colorization I've seen in a movie. It really feels like the time period that it's in. To have all of those things right, to have all of those things set for a tee off, and to miss every single one, honestly, it's impressive how bad. And I think the thing about Joker, Folie à Deux, or I'm just going to refer to it as Joker 2 from here on out because I hate saying Folie à Deux. Because it gives this pretentious feeling to the movie, and I don't think that we should give it that type of attention because it's not good. But the biggest tragedy of the movie is I actually enjoyed it up until it takes its turn in the last 20 to 25 minutes, which is what I want to talk a little bit more in detail today, because I do think for the world that they were trying to build, again, it's a very weak plot. I will give you that. And I saw someone say this today, and I 100% agree. I will not take credit for this, but someone referred to it as it's more of an epilogue than a sequel. And I 100% agree with that. It is more of an epilogue to the original movie than it is a direct sequel. That's what it feels like. More of hey, here's a third hour of the Joker movie. We're going to just cut this and make a sequel. And I don't know what to do. Throw some musical acts in it. But yeah, so we're going to be spoiling the shit out of this movie. I'm not happy about this movie at all, and want to get more of it off my chest. I want to talk about it a little bit more, kind of do a recap and just go over how did this movie go so wrong? You had an opportunity, right? There's a reason why people liked Joker in 2019. There's a reason why it made $1 billion. And it's really easy to sit down and look at that and go, well, it made $1 billion because it was sandwiched between everything that came out that year. Avengers, Endgame. Fucking Captain Marvel was sandwiched between Endgame and Infinity War, and that made $1 billion. Captain Marvel's a fucking terrible movie, in my opinion. But it made $1 billion that year. Anything superhero related in 2019 basically made $1 billion or came close to it. And so Joker was kind of already poised as this type of thing, but then it came out, it blew everyone away. The critics, they did get on board with it eventually, but fans went to it and they found it to be it's a fascinating character study we obviously know, like, going into the movie, it's not actually the Joker. It's the inspiration for who's going to become the Joker. And that was fine. Nobody, like, batted an eye about that. Nobody cared about it, but it was a fantastic character study. It had something to say about mental health. It had something to say about watching a person just kind of slip through the cracks of society, so to speak. And it just had so many interesting, like, threads you could pull at, pick apart. And just a fascinating movie. It was so well made, so well acted. Obviously, Joaquin Phoenix earned his much deserved Oscar, I believe, for that movie and that role. And you can go back to, and I think about specific scenes and how, like, it was dark and it was gritty, but it wasn't, there wasn't any part of it that I found, like, stupid or anything like that. So, and I also, you know, have famously said the entire time when they announced, hey, we're going to do a sequel and Lady Gaga is going to play Harley Quinn and it's going to be a musical. And even then I said, like, even that aside, I'm not somebody who, even though I play music and everything, I'm not a musical guy. Like, I don't like musical movies. Like, there are very few I like, which I can name. Like, I like Sweeney Todd. There's one other one. The Producers. That's the other one. That's kind of it. Like, I'm just not somebody who's really into musicals. And at the time when they announced this, like, I had the same opinion. And I will compare it to something else that I famously dislike on this channel that is probably my most controversial opinion. The Last of Us Part 2. And I said the same thing about that after The Last of Us and they announced its inevitable sequel. I didn't think I needed a sequel. I said that after Last of Us 1. Like, I think The Last of Us told a great, compelling, self-contained story that did not need to move further. And the Joker was the same way. It was a fascinating character study. It brought new light to the character of the Joker, whether it is or is not the Joker. That was the fun of the movie too. There was a fun underlying element of it to pull those things apart and go, like, well, maybe he was really the Joker. Maybe he's not the Joker. What parts of that movie were in his head? What parts of it maybe weren't in his head? There's a lot of fun aspects to that movie that are just ruined with this epilogue. You know, with Joker 2. And it reminds me so much of The Last of Us Part 2 in a way that I feel like I remember after it came out, Todd Phillips had said, I don't want to do a sequel. Joaquin Phoenix famously never wants to do a sequel to anything. And Warner Brothers said, well, this made a fucking $1 billion. We're going to back this money truck, you know, boom, 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 boom. And he finally begrudgingly said yes, agreed to it, kind of shittily had this script written and said, you know what, I'm going to tear it all down because I didn't want to make a sequel. And I've always felt the same way about The Last of Us Part 2. Like, The Last of Us Part 2, I feel like Neil Druckmann purposely self-destructed those characters because he didn't want to make a sequel. He wanted to go on and do something else. And Sony was like, no, you have to. And that's why, again, major spoiler for that game too, I guess, but that's why the character of Joel was killed in the first, like, hour of that game. And then you play more than, 65-70% of that game as the person that kills Joel because you're trying to learn that character's, you know, backstory. So you're trying to connect with a character that you don't want to connect with because you fucking hate them. They just killed your beloved character from the first game. Why would I give a fuck about them? Or their problems. I wouldn't. And then to have that game all kind of just, you know, how many people did Ellie kill in that game? Like 400 people. And then to get to the end of it, it's a revenge story. And then for her to just give up on that is so incredibly lame and stupid. It's bad writing. And Joker's the same way. And that's why it was a long-winded take to get to it, but Joker's the same way in its last 25 minutes, and I'll tell you exactly why. The whole point of this Joker movie, and this is the problem I had from even the beginning. Like, I said, I enjoyed a lot of it in the beginning. I got, I think the singing isn't that great in the movie. I think there's a lot of it that they could have done much better with. Also, song choices, like every song is about being fucking happy. And they're all like 70s songs, and that's fine, but like the songs don't convey any kind of emotion or what the characters are thinking or anything like that. So it kind of defeats the purpose of a musical, in my opinion. And half of the songs aren't even like set to the musical numbers you see in the trailer or any footage you're seeing here. There are literally scenes where he's just, sitting in Arkham Asylum smoking a cigarette, because they smoke like a fucking metric ton of cigarettes. They smoke more fucking cigarettes in this movie than the last 10 years combined movies that I've seen. Like, it is so insane how much cigarette smoke is in this movie. It's insane. But it all it's like a regression. Like, the movie starts, he's not at the end of the Joker, he fully embraced that persona. And the beginning of this movie, now he's back to just being Arthur Fleck. He kind of turns the Joker on and off when he wants to in different interviews and stuff. You see hints of it and whatnot. And I've said before, like, obviously Lady Gaga, she comes into it. She's not traditional Harley Quinn like you would expect. They obviously make changes, but I didn't mind the changes they made to her character. They made sense for the movie that they're trying to tell. And I was like, oh, I'm already going along with the movie where we know that this is not the real Joker anyway, so I don't really care at that point. We'll get to why I care later. So anyways, we get to the point where it's, the trial, and he ends up firing his judge, or he ends up firing his lawyer and takes over, and then gets into full Joker persona. They bring back Gary Puddles from the first movie, who famously was the dwarf character that watched him kill somebody. And I will say the scene that happens between Joaquin Phoenix and that actor is amazing. Probably the best scene in the movie. It needed so much more of that, and it just doesn't have it. It's so well done, and that's the unfortunate part. But the problem is, he makes a fatal flaw, and he says, I don't want to go back to Arkham and deal with the fat guards. The guards he's been, palling around with the half the movie. So when he gets back, they basically drag him up to like the bathroom, pull his pants down, and they do not show this, but it's heavily implied that he is raped by the police. But again, it's not, they don't show it. It's just like, you know what's going on. They drag him back to his cell. They throw him, on his cot or whatever. There's another guy that he was kind of friendly with in the prison that's in a different part of the cell block. And he's kind of singing, I believe, one of the songs, like when the Saints come marching in. They sing this song like 3 times in this movie. This guy starts singing it. The guards are already all hyper, and everything from what's been going on. So they go in there, they start beating the shit out of that guy. And the guard chokes this dude to death. And you hear it. You don't see it, but you hear it. And then they're kind of like, oh shit, that dude's dead. And for whatever reason, you think at this point in the movie, you're like, okay, this is going to probably break him to the point that he's really going to be the Joker when they go back to this end of this trial. So we get to the next day. He goes back to the trial. He pulls up, he's in full Joker garb. He pulls out the stool, sits down, gets the microphone. The judge looks at him and goes, I don't want any clown business. And he sits there for a while and then looks at everybody, kind of clears his throat, and he just goes, yeah, I actually am not the Joker. I realize that. I'm Arthur Fleck, and I killed 6 people. And then during that, he admits, the 6th death nobody knew about was he killed his mother in the original movie. Totally denouncing that he's the Joker. He doesn't want to be the Joker anymore. He just wants to go back to being Arthur Fleck. This, of course, pisses off Harley Quinn, who's in the audience. She gets up, she leaves, she goes back to her apartment. They show a brief scene where, like, it's almost like she's going to unalive herself with a gun, but then she doesn't, which, like, okay. And after all this happens, the jury kind of lets out. He goes and he tries to call her to get her to come back, leaves a voicemail or a voice message. It's the 80s. He's using a payphone. And then he goes back in, they start reading the verdict, where they get through like 2 or 3 of them are guilty, and a fucking bomb goes off. It blows up part of the thing, right? And after the rubble kind of clears, he gets up and kind of stumbles out. I thought it was funny because Harvey Dent's in this movie, which was a waste. But after the bomb goes off, they briefly show him and like half of his face is kind of fucked up. And I was like, oh, well, that's like one Easter egg in this movie. There's really no Easter eggs of anything in this movie, which is also fucking weird. But he gets out there and he kind of stumbles onto the street. And then there's one guy in a Joker mask and another guy in full Joker garb that looks just like him. And he's like, hey man, get in this car. We got to go. And he kind of shoves him in the car. They get going. And that's why I was like, okay, all right. I'm at the point where I'm like, this is probably how this movie's going to end. Like, he's going to realize, no, actually, I want to be the Joker. He's going to fully embrace it. And he's going to drive off these dudes and just, fuck it, I'm the Joker, right? And I would have been okay with that. I would have been like, it's still kind of a weak movie. And I don't like what happened to him in prison, obviously. But I would have been accepting of the end of the movie. I would have been like, it's like maybe like a 6. You know, but he is in the car and decides, no, I don't want to be a part of this. I mean, these dudes are making plans like, we're going to burn the fucking city down. You started a revolution, everything like that. He's like, no. And he kind of ducks and dips out of the car. These two dudes get out of the car and chase him. They both get apprehended. And he runs back to the iconic stairs from the first movie. And at the very top, Harley Quinn has rented his old apartment. And she's just kind of sitting up there smoking a cigarette. And he gets up there and he's like, hey, I'm out. I made it out. Somebody blew everything up. I said I wanted to blow it up. I blew it up. And we can go, run away and be together. And she's like, I don't want anything to do with you. Because she was not in love with Arthur Fleck. She was in love with the Joker. And the Joker is dead here, so to speak. Which she just kind of walks away. And then the police come and arrest him. So then he's back in Arkham Asylum. And he's watching TV. And a guard comes and says, like, hey, you have a visitor. Somebody's here to see you. And he's like, all right. And he starts walking away. And this fucking dude who they've kind of shown creeping in the background through, like, the movie in prison walks up and he goes, hey, Arthur, I want to tell you a joke. And he goes, turns around, he's like, all right, real quick. And the guy tells him a really shitty, like, joke about a down-on-his-luck comedian. And he goes, I walk into a bar. There's a down-on-his-luck comedian that I know, and I offer, what do you want? Like, what can I get you? And he goes, you can get me anything you want. He goes, okay, how about you get what you fucking deserve? And he pulls out a shank, and he just shanks Arthur Fleck and kills him. And as he's dying, they kind of show, like, shots of him. He kind of has a little vision of Harley Quinn or whatever. When they come back to him and he's laying on the floor bleeding out, they kind of briefly show in the background the guy that killed him has made a Glasgow smile with the knife, implying that might actually be the real Joker who inspired. He would be the actual Joker, and this was the inspiration. And that's the end of your movie. So which I think putting that line in there is an actual fuck you to the audience that liked the first movie, because they're saying, like, hey, you like this movie, you like this character that you weren't supposed to like, so fuck you, we're gonna take this away from you. That is the way I took it. It's a terrible fucking ending. It is demeaning to the character. Like, I know the Joker's not a good character, he's a fucking villain, but, like, at the same time, you didn't have to take him, throw him in a movie, have him gang raped by some cops, and then fucking killed. That's insane. Especially after how successful the first movie was, to just do that. And, like, definitively, there's not going to be another Joker movie. Like, even if there was plans for it in the background, this movie has done so dismal this weekend. And people that did see it, like me, that fucking hate it, are not going to go back and see it a second time anyways. There's no way they would make a third one, right? It's just tremendously awful. Like, I can't describe how bad it is when I sit and think about it. I give it 3 out of 10, and I think that's generous. And I recognize, as watching it, like, there are good elements of it. I think it's wonderfully shot. I don't think anybody gives a bad performance in it. Like, that's the other part. Like, Joaquin Phoenix does another bang up job. Lady Gaga, she's really good in the role. I liked the guy that played when they had kind of a palling around relationship. I liked Brendan Gleeson as the one guard. They had kind of an interesting relationship. Obviously, that was fucked up at the end, but in the beginning, I thought it was an interesting dynamic in the movie. And like I said, the movie begins with a fucking cartoon that's really well done. And like I said, as I watched it, as it went on more and more, I'm like, yeah, there are parts of it that you can consider kind of boring because it's a trial. Not everybody's into Law and Order type TV shows and trials and stuff. So I can understand some people are like, that part of that movie was kind of boring. But to get to this and then torpedo it, because I like I said, I got like an hour and a half. It's a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. And I'd say like by hour 45, hour 50 is when it has its turn. And up to that point, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I don't understand why people are hating this movie. I don't understand why the critics are that hard on it, because it doesn't seem like it's that terrible. And then the turn happens. And then it's just like, it just comes out of left field for the movie, in my opinion. It doesn't make sense. It's not good. It's not well executed in any way. It has nothing of value to say. Like at the end of it, it's like I've seen some people trying to push comparisons and be like, well, you know, it still deals with mental health, and it still deals with like the idea of like influencers today and stuff like that. I'm like, no, it really doesn't. When it may have had ideas that you could throw that in, and like if you're really trying to stretch, kind of like this movie's trying to stretch its 1/3 of a plot into a 2 hour and 20-minute movie, and their only answer was, well, we'll put some musical numbers in it. It's a real stretch to do that because, again, I would agree with you, but then you torpedoed the fucking end of the movie and you killed this character. Whether he is or is not actually going to be the Joker, definitively, obviously, he's not. But the other problem I have with that, too, is if you're going to say that, and that's fine, it made sense for the first movie because there's no other, like, we briefly saw Bruce Wayne. There's obviously dealings with the Waynes and kind of a sketchy part of the background of the history there. That was fine. None of that bothered me in the original movie. What bothers me here is now you brought in, clearly, here's Harvey Dent. Clearly, here's Harley Quinn. But then to say, well, it's not really the Joker. It's just fucking stupid. So, it's bad. It was a 3 out of 10 for me. I 100% stand by that rating, by the way. The funny thing too is like, I didn't go to the theater by where I live. We went to a different theater because we wanted to meet up with one of my friends to see it. And that theater notoriously like doesn't typically have audiences. Like for whatever reason, I will say it's a really nice theater. Pre-pandemic, it was always be like any movie you went to see was going to be busy. Post-pandemic, it's like ghost town. It's insane. But the theater by me, which is much smaller, is constantly sold out. And I looked at the night of the opening night here, like shows were only half sold out at that theater. The theater I went to, in the showing I saw, there were maybe total, including me, my friend, and my girlfriend, 7 fucking people in the theater. Opening night. That's bad. That's really, really bad. So, it deserves, and the thing is, like, there's some people like, well, we shouldn't dogpile. No, it deserves all the dogpiling it gets. It deserves a fuck you to Todd Phillips for even making it, or having the idea of, fine, I'll fucking make a sequel, but I'm gonna make it trash. And even for Joaquin Phoenix to come back and agree to do it, and then agree to trash the character is just stupid. The other thing that really bothers me, and I'm gonna wrap up this video, is I cannot understand how there's a single person at Warner Brothers that, you know how many hands this movie had to go through. There had to have been pre-screenings. There had to have been people that saw rough cuts of it. I cannot believe that there wasn't a single person that had the balls to stand up and say, this is not good. We probably shouldn't do this way. Maybe we should do something else for a sequel. My idea always was, if you want to do a sequel, why don't you just pick a different villain and do the same thing you did with the Joker and make another interesting character study? That would have been much better. And then it doesn't. And unfortunately, the thing now is like, I kind of wish I hadn't seen it because it tarnishes the original movie for me now. Because for as awesome and cool that movie is, I've seen the epilogue of this story now and it's trash. So it kind of forever tarnishes that movie for me. And I know there's always going to be some people that are like, well, you can still go back and watch the original movie anytime you want. It's like, I can, but I've seen the epilogue, man. It's really fucking bad. And it like, now I have to look at that and go, oh man, look what we had versus what we got. What a tragedy. I've also seen some articles rolling around of like, well, maybe it'll have some, Oscars. I don't think the Oscars touched this movie. I really don't. I think it was it wasn't a fluke, but I will actually say it was a fluke that it did. I go back to like, unfortunately, when it comes to comic book based movies, it's very rare for the Academy to recognize them as Oscar worthy outside of specific categories like, sound editing and mixing, cinematography sometimes, and special effects. That's it. You're never going to see like Chris Evans win for Captain America or something like that. So it was awesome to see Heath Ledger win his much deserved posthumous Oscar in 2009, which I also was a huge advocate for at the time. And then to see on the flip side of that, Joaquin Phoenix nearly 10 years later win an Oscar playing the same character, but a completely different version. And that was awesome. But I don't see the Academy touching this movie with a 10-foot stick, man. Like, I really don't. I think they avoid it like the plague when Oscar nod time comes, because they're not going to give Joaquin Phoenix another Oscar for playing the same role. And like I said, unfortunately, and I'm a fan of Lady Gaga. I like Lady Gaga. I own a good majority of her albums, and I find her to be a fantastic singer. And I feel like they wasted her in this movie with a lot of like what I would compare to like bathroom singing, because there's a lot of scenes like that where they're like half singing a song. It's a very half-assed musical, right? Because they're half singing songs. Well, they're either chain smoking or they were having a conversation with another person and somebody asked them a question and they turn around and just start fucking singing a song. And they because of that, they don't allow like her to really hit some of those high bars that she fucking can, because she's Lady Gaga. And I don't think I also would say like she's not bad as Harley Quinn. I think what she was given to work with, it worked, and I was not put down by this version of Harley Quinn. It's just unfortunate that the movie I would have made as being a sequel would have been much different than what we got. And I would not have made a musical, let's be fair. But it's just, what a tragedy. What a tragedy. This isn't going to affect anything else as far as Batman stuff goes. Like, we're still going to get the Batman 2 in 2026. This Penguin show, on the flip side of it, and that's what makes it even worse, this Penguin show has been phenomenal so far. I've seen both the episodes that have aired. I highly recommend that. If you want a good, gritty, well-written, adult crime story set in the world of Batman, the Penguin is fucking fantastic. Like, through and through. It scratches the itch that I'm missing from like a Sopranos type show. But it's so well done, so well acted and executed, very smartly written. Nothing but positive, glowing things to say about that. I know it's a miniseries, it's not going to be a show, and that's fine. I kind of glad, because I feel like 8 episodes is probably enough to tell the story of him going from like low level to being the king of Gotham's mob. And that's awesome. And I look forward to whatever they do in Matt Reeves' sequel. But to have that running at the same time as this shit Joker sequel is hilarious, because they have such a win on the other side. I think honestly, is it going to damage Batman as a brand or as a character? No. Or even the Joker as a character? No, because there's always going to be another iteration. We already have another iteration in Matt Reeves' Batman, and I think they'll have more of him probably in the sequel. And there'll be whatever James Gunn is doing. Like whenever we get to Batman in that universe, he'll probably do his own version of the Joker. So there's always going to be a Joker. It doesn't do anything to really damage the character. I think more than anything, people are going to look at this as a giant misstep of a movie that we just probably won't talk about when it's all said and done. But it deserves all of the dogpiling it's getting, and I urge you, like, honestly, like, even don't be like me and be curious. Just, if you haven't seen it yet, don't bother. Go watch the original movie instead. Live in a world where they never made a sequel, which is the world I wish I could have stayed in. So, and again, this is definitively I'm done talking about the movie at this point, but it's a 3 out of 10. Don't waste your fucking time with this garbage. I'm going to leave it at that. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.